All right, this is a quick breakdown of what actually matters from Chapter 9. At this point, you already know how to write clearly. Now, we're talking about something just as important: how your message looks. Visuals are not decoration, they actually do work for you. They help people understand faster, especially when something is complex. And more importantly, they shape how credible you seem. A clean visual builds trust. A messy one creates doubt immediately. Let's be honest. People don't read everything you write. They scan. Research on reading behavior shows that most people move through content in an F pattern. They read the first line, skim the second, and by the third, they're barely glancing. That's not laziness. That's how the brain processes information when it's overloaded. So, what does this mean for you practically? It means the most important information needs to be at the top, in the largest text with the clearest visual hierarchy. If something looks overwhelming, too much text, too many colors, no clear entry point, most people won't even try to understand it. They'll move on. Your visual's first job is to invite people in. If it doesn't do that, the content doesn't matter. This is where visual storytelling comes in. Instead of explaining everything with words, you show the idea. Think about timelines, comparisons, or simple layouts. They help people see the message instead of working to figure it out. Visuals are powerful, which means they can also be weaponized. Here's a real example. During the early pandemic, several news outlets published graphs showing COVID case numbers with a y-axis that didn't start at zero. Visually, the spike looked catastrophic. Technically, the numbers were accurate, but the design choice made the situation appear far more dramatic than the data actually showed. That's the line. The data was real, the framing was manipulative. You'll face these decisions in your careers. A client wants a chart that makes their sales growth look more impressive. An organization wants to downplay a data point that doesn't serve their narrative. Your job is to represent data honestly, even when it's inconvenient. Because once your audience discovers a misleading visual, and they often do, you don't just lose credibility on that one chart. You lose credibility on everything you've ever shown them. Now, with AI, this becomes even more important. AI can create beautiful visuals, but that doesn't mean they're accurate or unbiased. You're still responsible for what you put out there. So, always ask yourself, is this clear and honest? These 6 principles are your foundation. Let me break each one down quickly. Consistency. Your fonts, colors, and spacing should follow the same rules throughout. If your headers change style every slide, it feels amateur. Contrast. Make important things look different from unimportant things. Dark text on a light background. Bold headings over regular body text. Contrast guides the eye. Balance. Distribute elements so nothing feels lopsided or chaotic. Visual weight matters even when people can't explain why something looks off. Emphasis. One thing should be the most important thing on each visual. If everything is emphasized, nothing is. Convention. Use what people already know. Arrows suggest movement, red suggests danger, green suggests go. Fighting convention costs your audience mental energy. And simplicity, which ties all of them together. When in doubt, remove something. Complexity is not sophistication. Clarity is. If your visual is confusing, it's not working. Full stop. Here's something designers learn early. Complexity is not a signal of intelligence. It's usually a signal of unclear thinking. When you can't simplify something, it often means you haven't fully understood it yet. The clearest communicators, in any field, are the ones who can take something complicated and make it feel obvious. Think about the best infographic you've ever seen. It probably covered a lot of ground, but it felt effortless to read. That's not an accident. That's the result of removing everything that wasn't essential. So the rule is this. If you're adding an element and you can't explain exactly why it needs to be there, take it out. Simple always wins. Because simple means your audience spends their energy on your message, not on figuring out your design. You don't need visuals for everything, but knowing when to use them is a real skill. Use a visual when the information is complex. When a paragraph would take 5 sentences to explain something, a single diagram makes obvious in 2 seconds. Use a visual when you're working with data. Numbers alone rarely tell a story. A well-chosen chart reveals a pattern that raw figures hide. Use a visual when you're showing relationships, how parts connect, how a process flows, how one thing leads to another. Structure is easier to see than to read. But here's the flip side. Not everything needs a visual. A simple fact doesn't need a chart. A short list doesn't need a diagram. Adding visuals where they aren't needed doesn't enhance communication, it clutters it. The question is always, does this visual make the message clearer? If the answer isn't an immediate yes, don't add it. Think of the 5 C's as your quality checklist before anything goes public. Clear. Can someone understand the main point in under 5 seconds? If not, redesign it. Not rewrite it. Redesign it. Complete. Does it include everything the audience needs to make sense of what they're looking at? Missing context creates confusion and mistrust. Concise. Does it include anything the audience doesn't need? Every extra element competes for attention. Cut it. Connected. Does the visual actually support your message, or is it just decoration? A beautiful chart that doesn't connect to your point is noise. And compelling. Does it earn attention? This doesn't mean flashy. It means relevant, well-designed, and worth a second look. Here's a real example of what happens when these break down. In 2003, NASA engineers presented slide decks about the Space Shuttle Columbia's foam insulation damage. The slides were packed with bullet points and data, but the critical risk information was buried so deep in the hierarchy that decision makers missed it. 14 days later, Columbia broke apart on re-entry. The data existed, the warning existed, but the visual communication failed. The Columbia Accident Investigation Board later cited the PowerPoint culture at NASA as a contributing factor. That's not a small stakes example. That's what happens when visuals fail the 5 C's at the highest level. If your visual passes all 5, you're ready. If it fails even 1, go back. Choosing the wrong visual type is one of the most common and most damaging mistakes in professional communication. Here's a quick guide. Line charts show change over time. If you want to show how something grew, declined, or shifted across months or years, line chart. It's designed for movement. Bar charts show comparison. You want to show how different categories stack up against each other, departments, products, regions. Bar chart, easy side-by-side reading. Pie charts show proportion, what percentage of a whole something represents, but use them carefully. They break down fast when you have more than 4 or 5 categories, and they're nearly impossible to read when slices are similar in size. Flow charts show process, steps, sequences. Decision trees. If someone needs to understand how to move through a system, flow chart. And scatter plots show correlation, whether 2 variables tend to move together. The mistake most people make is defaulting to whatever chart type is easiest to build, not the one that best serves the data. Ask yourself, what is the relationship in this data? Then choose the visual that shows that relationship most clearly. These mistakes show up constantly, even from experienced communicators. Over-design. This is when someone adds gradients, drop shadows, animation, and 6 font styles to a single slide. It looks like effort. It reads as confusion. The more decorative choices you make, the more you distract from the actual message. Too much data. Showing everything you know is not the same as communicating clearly. A slide with 15 data points teaches nothing. Pick the 2 or 3 that matter most. Wrong chart type. Using a pie chart to show change over time. Using a line graph to compare discrete categories. The wrong chart doesn't just look bad, it actively misleads your audience about what the data means. And misleading scales. Truncating a y-axis. Inconsistent intervals. Cherry-picked time ranges. These are the choices that cross the line from design into manipulation. The question to ask before publishing anything: does this make the data clearer, or does it make me look better? Those are not the same thing. Here's something I want you to sit with for a second. You are already a visual communicator every day. The way you format a text message, whether you use bullet points or paragraphs in an email, how you organize a slide for class, the thumbnail you choose for a video, the layout of your LinkedIn profile, all of that is visual communication. You're already making design decisions. You're just not always making them intentionally. That's what this chapter is asking you to change. Because in professional settings, the quality of your visual communication signals how you think. A well-organized slide tells a hiring manager or a client that you think clearly. A cluttered one, even with great content, creates doubt. You've already been doing this your whole life. Now you're doing it on purpose. And that shift from instinctive to intentional is what separates communicators from professionals. I'll leave you with this. Good visuals help people understand. Great visuals build trust. And here's what connects Chapter 9 to everything else we've covered this semester. Trust is not built in a single moment. It's built through consistent, honest, clear communication over time. Here's a case that shows both sides of that. In 2009, the CDC released early H1N1 flu projections using charts that dramatically overstated the projected death toll. Not through false data, but through visual framing that implied worst-case scenarios were most likely. Public trust in CDC communications dropped sharply when the actual numbers came in far lower. But here's what matters. The CDC responded by redesigning how they communicated uncertainty in data. They introduced confidence interval visualizations, plain language explainers alongside every chart, and clearer labeling of projections versus confirmed figures. Over the following years, and especially during subsequent health emergencies, trust in CDC data communication recovered, precisely because the organization took the visual misstep seriously and fixed it systematically. The lesson isn't that they got it wrong. The lesson is that they owned it, corrected it, and built something better. That's the same principle that applies to your crisis response, your media relations, your spokesperson, and your visuals. When your communication is accurate, accessible, and honest, people learn to trust your judgment. And in business communication, that trust is your most valuable professional asset. Design it carefully.